Blog Talk Radio.
Thanks, County 23, I'll give you a corrected address, but we do have a fire in a one-story ordinary. Looks like it's about 40 by 120, 125. We'll get to traffic control. Squad 5, Squad 5. We'll go to 273, 273. We'll go to Battalion 18, 18th Battalion. We'll go to 273, 273.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. I'm your host, Tom Merrill, and I'd like to thank you tonight, whether you're listening in live or maybe recording it like I usually do and listen to it while you're working around the house or doing some exercising or whatever you're doing. I just want to let you know I really appreciate you coming in today or tonight and listening in on the show. And today is November 18th, 2014, and this is our second episode. And I've got to tell you, I'm kind of excited because I received some good positive feedback from the premiere episode, which ran last month. There were a few glitches with it, but overall I think it went good, and I'm getting some good feedback from people that they like the message we're trying to get out. And I'm also encouraged by the number of people that reached out to me. I actually got a lot of recommendations on future show ideas, which was great, including even one of the hot topics today, which is response to a possible Ebola patient. So I thought that was interesting. Matter of fact, that actually is our EMS drill at my local firehouse tomorrow. I believe it's going to be covering response procedures for that, and that certainly is a hot topic, although not one we have planned to maybe talk about tonight. But I do appreciate the feedback, the comments. Please reach out to me at tamerrill63@AOL.com. You can also find me on Facebook, and I'd love to hear from you. There's a lot of great volunteer firefighters out there doing great things every day and a lot of great professional departments, and I would love to hear from you. Would love to hear some of your success stories, some of your challenges, and hear what you have to say. It's better to hear from you than to hear me babble for an hour and a half, although I can do it. I can certainly do it, but I would certainly love to hear from you. And again, it's my hope this show is going to cover a wide range of topics. Shoot me your ideas, but we're going to talk about everything, stories and concerns and challenges involving today's volunteer fire service, and talk about things that also impact the department's reputation. And you're going to hear me always getting back to that main theme, which is being professional has nothing to do with earning a paycheck. As I said many times, it has everything to do with your ability to handle emergency calls effectively, and has to do with the department's overall attitude and appearance and dedication, commitment to getting the job done. All of that plays into the equation of a volunteer firefighter. And I think you're listening, so you would obviously agree with that message. And nothing to do with the age of your equipment. The size of your firehouse has nothing to do with how many runs you go on in a year, and nothing to do with that at all. And that's going to be our main theme. And again, love to hear from you, love to hear your comments, your feedback. Reach out to me, email me, get a hold of me on Facebook. If you want me to call you or you want to call me, certainly we can do that as well. And looking to talk to the great firefighters that are out there all over, not just in the United States, all over. I had people reach out to me from Canada, and I think the more we hear, the more we can get our stories out there, the better it is for everybody. And hey, if you get a chance, I want you to sign on to fireengineering.com and check out Chief Lasky's roll call tip for this month. Now, I'm sure most of you, if not everybody, knows who the great Chief Rick Lasky is, and he's got a lot of great comments about the fire service, both paid and volunteer. And today, this month, he hit the nail on the head and talked exactly about the issues that we talk about, and that's paid firefighters versus volunteer firefighters, and how they can both groups can be considered professional. And I just want to give you a quick little bite of that, but I encourage you to go on fireengineering.com and check out Chief Lasky's roll call video for the month.
Hi, I'm Rick Lasky, and for today's Pride and Ownership Minutes, I'd like to spend just a little bit of time with you visiting about career and volunteer firefighters. Not too long ago, I was at a particular department, and I was doing a leadership program during the day, and I noticed that there's an aisle in between the tables and chairs, and all their officers were there, and I noticed there was kind of a difference between this group over here and that group over there, And after a couple hours, I asked the group, I said, now, are these two different battalions or districts or what is this? And one of the officers in this group said, well, we're the professional officers, they're the volunteers. And I said, okay. I understand it's probably on your sticker and all that, because I've served both as a union firefighter and as a volunteer in my career. I think the language you've got kind of mixed up is, you mean you're the career firefighters and they're the volunteers. You're the career officers, they're the volunteer officers, but you're both professionals.
Isn't that a great message? Isn't that a great message? Absolutely. That's what it's all about. Nothing to do with disrespect for either group. Both groups can be professional, and it's all about striving to be professional. And I hope everything's going good in your department. And for those who don't know, I'm located just outside Buffalo, New York, and we are all over the national news tonight. As you may know, we have quite the snowstorm raging in the Buffalo area. But you know what? Where I am, which is just about 10 minutes outside of Buffalo, a little bit north and over to the east, we have exactly, what we call a trace of snow. We have nothing compared to what they're having a little bit south of us. And matter of fact, where my sister-in-law and brother-in-law live just outside our town, they have 60 inches thereabouts and counting, and they're expected to get anywhere possibly up to 80 inches of snow within the next couple of days. And it's quite a day here in the western New York area, as pretty much all over the eastern area of the United States, I'm being told. But at my paid job at the fire alarm office, we've spent the day coordinating resources and sending assistance and snowmobiles to other parts of the area to help out. And, that's certainly one thing that doesn't discriminate against volunteers or paid, is it? And it's the weather. And that would certainly be a good topic for someday. Talk about the challenges of cold weather firefighting with buried hydrants and frozen hydrants, and even putting your turnout gear on if you don't remember, for those that keep it in their automobile, if you don't remember to bring it in that night. When you go outside and it's 20 degrees or 15 degrees or even colder, you got to put cold turnout gear on. You get a slow start to the operation. And conversely, I'm sure those that deal with the warm weather or the hot weather have just as many challenges to face. So maybe someday we can work that into our show, talk about those challenges. But again, certainly doesn't discriminate between paid or volunteer firefighters. So fun day here in Buffalo, but you know what? We can handle it. We're not afraid of it. We deal with it. It's just another day at the office, so to speak, and we're not worried at all, and we'll get through it, and snow melts. So and actually by Monday they're saying it's going to be 50 degrees, so that's just another day, another week in the Buffalo, New York area, which we love tremendously. Hey, I'm excited about my guest tonight. For those who don't know, I've invited one of my mentors, one of my heroes, and that's retired FDNY Chief John Salka, to join us tonight. And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things. And Chief Salka is also a volunteer firefighter and has been for a long time. And I think he's been a volunteer longer than he was a paid firefighter. And he currently serves in his hometown department. And we're going to let him talk about his journey through the fire service and also his experiences. And one of the main themes that I want to talk to him about tonight is the challenges but also the advantages to being a paid firefighter and also a volunteer firefighter, because I'm sure there are some challenges, but there's also obviously some great benefits to having people like that. Experience comes into mind. Maybe they go to a lot more fires. Most likely they do, and they might have seen a lot of different other situations, but we'll talk about that. And I'm sure, but there are also challenges that he's going to be able to talk about. So let's see if we can get Chief Salka on here to join us and give him a welcome. Chief Salka, are you with me?
Yes. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Chief. It's good to hear you tonight, and I can't tell you how honored I am to have you on my show.
Oh, it's my pleasure and my honor to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. Glad it worked out tonight. For those who don't know, we tried to get the Chief on last month, and computers being computers and technology being technology, we had some sort of a split, didn't we, Chief?
Wasn't cooperating, but we did connect tonight, which is great. So I've been listening to you for a little bit now, and you've got some great concepts, some great ideas out there. I've been reading your articles, and I remember coming up to your department. How long ago was that now? Do you remember?
Yes, 2012, April of 2012, to our installation.
When you were going out as chief.
Yes, sir.
It was a little bit of a surprise. It was pretty nice what your people did for you. They had me there during the day for a seminar, and then they had you believing that I was on the way home, after the seminar, to be home for dinner for that night. And really what they did was they kept me over, and I made a little surprise appearance with you and for you at the at your department's annual dinner that night, which was fantastic. I really had a great time that night.
Absolutely, certainly one of the highlights of my career. Absolutely, and so honored. And of course, the reason that all happened is over the years that I was chief, I think they got a little tired of me quoting you, Chief Salka, and referring to a lot of your articles and the way of doing things. Not just technical things either, just the way to be a firefighter and to carry yourself in the firehouse and how to be as in the firehouse. And so they know how much I respected you and really wanted to surprise me. So yeah, they had you come in for a seminar, which I knew, but I had no idea that they had you stay until our installation dinner that night as our guest. And
great surprise.
I was so
great
honored.
Surprise.
I was so honored. That was a great night, and certainly
and now here
one of
you
the highlights.
are writing, and here you are with the radio show, and I got to tell you, there's probably some people out there saying, hey, that Chief Tom Merrill from upstate outside of Buffalo, you see his newest article? Did you see what he talked about? You know, because I think the theme, the professional volunteer, I think that is such a tremendous theme. And when I look through, I mean, that's the main title, but all the subtitles you have, all the articles you've been writing, all the different angles and perspectives on that single concept are they're unbelievable. They're really it's really a great series.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I feel like sometimes you see on people's apparatus that great logo, professional service by volunteers, and I've seen that locally in some of our companies, and I've seen it nationally when you go to FDIC or other conventions. Other people pick that and put it on their rig, and I think that's such a great expression, and it says so much. But sometimes we've got to take a step back and remind ourselves of that yeah, we are volunteers, but you know what? There's still a professional way to behave in everything we do, whether it's the way we treat our members, the way we treat the public, the way we train, the way we prepare, and I never thought it would take off into this type of forum and articles after article, and it's been a fun time. And I have to thank you and Chief Lasky and certainly Bobby Halton and, oh my gosh, even Harry Eisner, who passed away. What a tragedy that was. Or Harvey,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Harvey Eisner. What an absolute.
Yeah.
He printed my first article with your encouragement, and I have those people to thank as well.
Yep.
He was he was certainly a nice, neat man. I talked to him a few times, and I was very upset to hear that he passed away.
Oh yeah, I visited with him just a day or two before he passed away. He came to my home, and he was in the process of gathering and collecting information for another book. He was writing a book about the FDNY. I think the title was going to be "Soldiers in a War That Never Ends," which is part of a phrase that's printed on the Fireman's Monument in Manhattan. And he was interviewing guys like myself that just recently retired, guys that were still working, guys that were retired for 20 years, 30 years, even 40 years. He was retired. He interviewed some 96-year-old guys about about the job and the heroics and the firehouse routine and all sorts of other stuff. But tragedy that
real tragedy for the fire service and for people that knew him personally as well. Just a great man and a great person for our fire service. Hey, you just said something.
So what do you want to talk about tonight? You have a couple of questions or issues lined up?
Absolutely. I got a few. I could talk forever with you, Chief. And but before I get into that, I did have one quick question, and I'm going to put you on the spot because I don't know if you'll even know the answer to this. But when you mentioned how he was interviewing 96-year-old former firefighters, because once a firefighter, always a firefighter. Do you have any idea who the oldest living FDNY retiree is? I was wondering if they have some centurions or not. That would be something interesting to find out.
I don't know for sure, but I do remember reading either online or somewhere in the past, let's say 6 months, I believe it was the passing of a guy that was over 100 years old. And at the time of his passing, he may have been one of the oldest former or retired firefighters from the FDNY. Yeah, which is quite a feat.
Could you imagine having the opportunity to sit down with him before he passed away, just to talk about how it was and the way things were done? That just would be absolutely priceless.
I mean, I just talked to guys, and these are all guys that are still alive. Guys like Tom Kennedy and Joe DiBernardo and these guys that were my idols when I was a young firefighter, just getting on the job, and these were the guys that were big names in the FDNY, and of course they went on to become deputy chiefs and stuff like that. Just talking to them about their early career, even my early career 33 years ago, is unrecognizable. The firehouses and the routine and the rigs and the gear is almost unrecognizable compared to today's. Never mind them. Those guys were on 10, 15 years ahead of me.
Wow.
And then, like I said, you go into the guys that were on 20 years and 30 years earlier, and it's one of those. It's a circle. It's a wheel, and it just keeps going around and around and around. Yeah.
Oh, geez, that's. Why don't you tell us a little bit? Like, I never even know this about you. Like, what got you into the fire service? A lot of times with the FDNY, there's connections via family, things like that. But I know you traveled around a bit. You were a volunteer, and then you went to Florida. How did you get? What got you into the fire service?
This is a great story. This is a great story, and I'll tell you right off the bat. My buddy Rich Bonnets is the key. He it's all his fault, and he and I
got him to blame, huh?
Huh?
You got him to blame, right?
Absolutely.
He's the one that got you in.
I wanted to be a cop. I was in high school. I was interested in police work. I graduated. I went to college. I went to college for criminal justice. I was very set. I was living on Long Island at the time. I wanted to be a Nassau County cop. It's a big police department out there, very, very prestigious job, and they make nice money, and very, very interesting work. And that's where I was headed. But I was a volunteer fireman as well, with my buddy Rich Bonnets and lots of other guys, and I absolutely loved that as well. He said, "Hey, I'm going to take the FDNY test. You want to come take it with me?" I said, "Nah, I'm going to wait for the police test." He said, "Why don't you take the FD test?" Now, the funny thing is, Rich's dad was an NYPD sergeant, highway patrol at the time, and he had no interest in being in a police department. He wanted to go in the fire department. I think his girlfriend's dad, I think, was a battalion chief or something. And anyway, so he pretty much talked me into, come on, take the test. It costs you nothing. All right, so we went and I took the test, and I did well. Actually, I did better than him. And now, you can wait for years on a New York City list. My number was 1668. I'll never forget it. 1,668. Wasn't at the top of the list, but it wasn't even in the middle. It was the top half, let's say. But
how many took it?
It was
back
a couple
then?
of years wait. I figured out it'll be a couple of years before I get hired. So Rich and I went down to Florida. We went to the Florida State Fire Academy in Ocala. It was a 200-hour minimum standards course. Back then, that's about 35 or 38 years ago now. That was 38 years ago. To be a career firefighter in the state of Florida, you had to go through the state academy, 200-hour minimum standards course, and you had to pass a really difficult, challenging physical. Matter of fact, most places that you went to get a job, they gave you the physical first to weed out everybody that was going to fail that, and then the guys that passed the physical, they gave the written test to. And so we ended up going there, and we rented a big double-wide trailer in a beautiful Florida park. We had a swimming pool and everything. That's where we lived, a couple of miles away from the academy. We went there for, I think it was about a month. And when we graduated, we just started driving around and putting applications in, taking tests. We both got hired in Titusville, Florida, which is right on the East Coast next to Kennedy Space Center. And I spent a year and a half there. He spent 2.5 years. I ended up getting on the job a year ahead of him. And then we both ended up coming back to the FDNY and doing our careers. So it was
someday if we ever do.
Go ahead.
I was going to say someday if we ever do talk about what I mentioned earlier. I don't know if you heard when I mentioned about the weather we're getting here. You certainly have experience in cold weather firefighting and warm weather firefighting.
Oh boy, I'll tell you what, that was no fun. The hot weather in Florida was no fun. If you've never lived in Florida, you don't want to live there in July and August. I'll tell you that. You could literally fry an egg on the hood of a car. We used to paint houses on the side. Gosh, I think we were making about $11,000 a year. That was the salary. And we used to paint houses on the side. We started about 7 a.m. We'd get done at 11. We'd pack up and we'd be done at 11. It'd be too hot after 11 o'clock.
Too hot,
to be outside.
That's great.
Yep.
Wow. That's interesting. So you wanted to be a cop first, huh?
Oh, gosh.
So you had no family connections or anything with the FDNY, did you?
Say again?
No family, no family
connections
or
I had no
anything
connection
in
to the FDNY whatsoever, other than being in the volunteers, which is coincidentally, a big topic for you. So I like to think that the volunteer fire service is what introduced me to and got me involved in the FDNY.
Wow. Hey, real quick, talk about connections. I ran into, make a long story short, I got my daughter's best friend, who she met in kindergarten. Turns out here in Buffalo or Amherst, where I live, her grandfather, the father of the mother that I know really well, is a retired FDNY captain who served during the war years from the early 60s until the early 90s. He didn't know your name, though. I was shocked to hear that. and it was a Captain Buffa, B-U-F-F-A, Paul Buffa, and he worked in the Bronx too.
Really?
Worked in the Bronx, and
well, you see, most of my career, my early career, I never was up in the Bronx. My early career started in Midtown Manhattan, then I went down to the First Division, stayed there. Then I made lieutenant. Then I went to Brooklyn, and then I appeared up in the Bronx when I made captain. So it was later in my career.
Yeah. It's just so interesting because talk about irony, and the irony of this whole story is, so again, this is my youngest daughter's. I have 4 daughters, and this is my youngest daughter's best friend. So her grandfather is a retired FDNY captain. Well, when I was chief, they had an attic fire in their house. And don't you know who's calling me right after the fire to ask me a bunch of questions? And I was like, oh, gosh, I hope I did everything the way it was supposed to be done. He sent me the nicest note. And I see him a couple times a year. He comes into town to visit his daughter and his granddaughter, and I see him, and he's just such a nice guy. Great stories, and served a very, very long time in the FDNY and has nothing but great memories and great stories. And, of course, he was part of the war years, too. So,
yeah,
but, hey,
sure.
I imagine what I wanted to talk about tonight, one of the things is, was it challenging? Is it challenging? Well, before I get into that, why don't you tell us about how you've progressed in your volunteer company? Now, you come back to New York, you get on the job in FDNY. What got you back into a volunteer company? Did you do it right away, or did you wait a bit, or was it after you moved to where you live now?
You know, I was in the volunteers in Long Island, and that's where I left. I left Long Island and the volunteers to go to Florida. You know, I maintained my presence in the company there. I was on leave for a year or so, and which a lot of volunteers will let you do. And when I came back, I went back active again. And then I met my wife after I got on a job. And her mom had a place upstate in New York, and we used to visit, on the weekends and that. She had a little summer cabin up in the woods. And it was absolutely beautiful. I said, oh, I'd love to live around here. And it turns out that's what I did. I ended up buying a little bungalow up in the woods like they had. And that was my first home that I purchased. $31,000, by the way. I'm trying to remember what year it was. 81, I think it was. And so once I settled into the little community, very rural, then I was attracted back to the same thing, back to the volunteer firehouse. I said, even though I was a career firefighter, even though I was with the FDNY, you still spend a lot more hours of the week at home than you do at work. And I said, since I was already interested in it, I went down. Turns out the little volunteer firehouse that I joined, the South Blooming Grove Volunteer Fire Department, was founded by not only but a bunch of New York City firefighters who had moved up to Orange County, and that they were out in the middle of nowhere. They were being served by the 2 closest villages. They ended up making their own fire district and starting their own company and got their own rigs. And I think for a year or 2 they had the rigs parked in driveways. Each guy had a rig at his house, and before they actually built the building and all that. But anyway, turned out there was a bunch of guys from the job there, so that made it even easier to join. And gosh, that's 30-something years ago now. I've been here over 30 years.
And you worked your way through the ranks once before, right? You were chief,
so
weren't
chief
you?
of the department in 96 to 98. And of course, all the ranks below that in the years coming up to that. And I'm the second assistant chief right now. Again, being retired and being home all the time, they sort of dragged me back in again. So here I am.
Wow. Now I got to ask you, when you got into FDNY and then you go to a volunteer department, there's got to be some challenges with that, but there's also got to be a lot of advantages to that. I mean, your experience alone, but also respecting the traditions of the volunteer department, respecting even, like, I would imagine the line officers who, might work at a grocery store or work somewhere, anywhere but FDNY, but they're still the chief. So you got 2 different hats you're wearing there, and it's got to be a little bit of a juggling act, I would think.
For sure. No, I was a pretty young guy. I was in my late 20s, early 30s when I moved up here, and most of the folks that were officers or chiefs here were older, 10 years, 12 years older than I. So right off the bat, just out of respect for the seniority, I wouldn't question anything anybody was doing. Of course, everybody does things differently. The volunteers from the paid, the New York City, from South Blooming Grove, everybody does things a little differently than everybody else. But I never really had a problem doing it. Now, obviously, when I'm working, when I'm a chief, when I'm an officer, I do things the way I do it, whether I was in New York or whether I was here. But I really never had a problem. And actually, I've always boasted a little bit about the one thing that I really like is I'm just another guy in the firehouse when I'm here. You know what I'm saying? You know, I get so used to traveling around the country, and people come up to you and want to meet you and talk to you and ask questions, and I read your book, and this was a great presentation, and all the accolades, which are just wonderful, and they do your ego good, and they make you feel like you're having an impact out there. But sometimes you want to be off the stage. Sometimes you don't want to be the guy that everybody's looking at or watching, and that's who I am at South Blooming Grove. I'm just another one of the guys there. I'm just John. I'm just another ex-chief that's going through the ranks again. And that's nice, because even when I was at work, I was always the battalion chief and always the guy that people were listening to and asking questions. And I'd go home to the volunteer firehouse and just sit around with everybody else and just be one of the boys, which was nice to always have that.
Yeah. Did you sometimes want to introduce like the FDNY ways to the volunteers for certain strategies or tactics and get rebuffed? Was that ever like, we don't do it that way here? Or didn't you even, you knew they had their own way out in South Blooming Grove, so you didn't try to do that so much?
Well, I mean, we have pre-connects here that we don't have in New York City. We have things here that we don't have in New York City, but some of the concepts that New York City follows are regional, and then the folks here in Orange County and the Hudson Valley and Long Island and all the every big city like Buffalo, I'm sure has some impact and some effect on the volunteer companies around Buffalo, just because they're the big guys, in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of places I visit are right outside of a big city, and they say, we do a little bit of stuff just sort of like Kansas City, or sort of, just like, Tampa, or wherever we happen to be. So there's some things that we do are in line with things that New York City does, and some things are dramatically different. I mean, I never did a chimney fire in New York City. We don't have the chains. We don't have the chimney fire kit. There's all sorts of stuff that we do here that we don't do in New York City, and it's nice. It's like two different jobs,
Yeah. I mean, we might be getting some chimney fires sooner than later this year with what we have tonight.
Oh, yeah, with this weather. Gosh, the snow got close to you, but you're not getting hit, huh?
No, I'm in Amherst, which is just northeast of Buffalo, and we have a trace of snow. Now, it's going to shift around a little bit, and we're probably going to get some tomorrow, but 10 minutes from us, 40 to 50 inches right now they're getting.
It's really phenomenal how that close they can get that much.
You could see it, and I'm sure if you went on the Internet, there's probably pictures all over the place, but you could see driving today the clouds acting almost like a wall. You could see exactly in the air where the snow was and where it was sunny where we were, and you could just see this massive cloud bank all through the sky.
Lake almost snow, right?
It was like, yes, it was like the line of demarcation. It was really, really interesting. But like I said, we can deal with it.
Yes.
But I did say too, I don't know if you heard me say too, I keep my gear. Do you let your volunteers keep gear in their car, or do they have to go to the firehouse?
Our guys all keep their gear at the firehouse.
Okay.
As assistant chief, I keep mine in my car because I'm Car 3 and I go in my car. But even when I wasn't Car 3, when I was a captain or lieutenant, I always kept my gear because I live pretty far away from the firehouse. So if we were to get a fire or a good accident, by the time I get there, the rigs will be out and I end up going in my own vehicle. But about 95% of the guys all keep their gear on the rack right in the firehouse. That's where everybody goes, right down to the firehouse. And they board the rig there. They get dressed before they get on. The officer selects the crew. They get on the rig and off they go.
Yeah, I keep mine in. Our rule at our firehouse is if most of the time you're going to be passing the scene to get to the call, you can keep the gear in your car. So mine's in my car. And nights like tonight, you got to remember to bring it in. Did you ever forget to bring it in on a cold night?
Luckily I have a garage, and my garage stays pretty warm, and my truck is in the garage, and my gear is in my truck. So I get in my truck. The tough part's getting from the house to the garage because sometimes it's cold and windy and snowy out there. But once I'm in the truck, I'm good because it's all warmed up inside.
Well, there's an old-time Buffalo firefighter retired out of Rescue 1. Told me he's also a volunteer, and he's been an assistant chief in the volunteer ranks here locally. His theory was he would always put his bunker pants on before responding because he found too many times when he got to a good incident, it was hard. He believed in being fully geared up, as I do, and a good incident commander, I think, should have gear on. I don't like the look when people are wearing shorts and a vest at a structure fire, just my opinion. But he was always of the opinion that he would put his gear on, the bunker pants, before responding. That way, when he got to the scene, when people are yelling and there's decisions to be made quickly, he at least already had his bunker pants on and he could walk.
Right, he wasn't out in the street jumping up and down trying to put his suspenders over his shoulders.
Exactly. I kind of like that.
I've been there.
He would even pull over if he was like driving through his local town and they got a fire alarm activation or any type of fire call. He would actually pull over and put his gear on before responding. And some chiefs are so quick they got to get on the radio right away that they would never think of doing that. Although you could still get on the radio, respond, pull over, and put your gear on. But I just thought that was an interesting way of doing things.
Yeah, that is interesting.
I've been there, too, where you got to make a decision quick, and you're fumbling with your gear, and people are yelling at you, where do you want this, what do you want this, or a citizen's talking to you. So how about traditions? I know FDNY is a very tradition-filled company. Did you ever try to bring any of those into your volunteer company, or did they have their own traditions anyway that they were very strong with, or did you?
Well, I guess everybody sort of has some of their own traditions, some of their own habits that they do and they form and stuff like that. I've definitely brought some of the stuff from the FDNY. Stuff like, a matter of fact, I had to sort of say something just recently. We had a little structural fire. We went mutual aid to a structure fire. You there?
Yep, I'm here.
We went mutual aid to a structure fire, and a couple of guys got off the rig without a tool. I said, "What are you guys doing?" They said, "What?" I said, "Don't get off the rig without a tool. That's always a rig. That's always been a rule in the FDNY. Just about every company I ever worked in. You get off the rig, you have a tool in your hand. Obviously, if you're an engine crew, your hose line is your tool. But if you're down in South Blooming Grove, we have an engine and we have a truck, but you don't really roll up as the engine and truck. Most of the time, the engine rolls up first. You get off the rig. If it's a car accident, one guy might have to pull a pre-connect. Another guy might have to grab the irons and pop the hood open and get the battery. Another guy might have to grab a first aid bag and go over to the door and try and render assistance. Mm-hmm. So, but you always have to be doing something. I told the guys you should never be empty-handed. If you're empty-handed, you're no more useful than a guy standing on the side of the road watching us.
Absolutely.
So there was a rule. There was not a rule, but a little bit of a tradition that I tried to carry in to the volunteers.
We have some big buildings in our district, including several high-rises, and it would always amaze me that sometimes people would get off rigs to go investigate a fire alarm, and in addition to maybe not having a pack on, they wouldn't have a light or a tool, and it's like, if you get in there and find you have something, you're a little behind the 8 ball now. Hey, Chief, you know what I forgot to do, and I got to do it right now, is we got to take 20 seconds here. Yes, it's time to say
Grainger,
thank you to
900,000 products.
Grainger. Absolutely.
The 4,600-page Grainger catalog. Every solution on earth for every problem under the sun. And now it fits in your pocket. Download the app today. Get it? Got it? Good. Call, click Grainger.com, or stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
That's true, right? I don't know. That's one of your favorite vendors and mine, too. I told the story last month.
Got it. I got the catalog.
When we built
right
our new firehouse, we bought just about everything for our new firehouse through Grainger, any product we needed when we were setting that up back in the late 90s, and great company.
Oh, what a beautiful firehouse you guys got. I remember my visit there. It was absolutely beautiful. I still have pictures of that.
Yes, we love it, and, it's funny, as much as we love it, and it's so practical for today, and we needed it desperately because our other one was built in 1922, and it was so tight. Sometimes you still miss that old firehouse. You can still smell the smells and hear the arguments that took place down in the old club room, and think about how crowded we were. And sometimes you think back nostalgically as to how it was with the old firehouse. And but that being said, we do love our new firehouse, and that's not new anymore. It'll be 20 years already in a couple of years.
Wow.
So hey, one of my big things with both volunteer and paid, and the one thing that I've gotten the most feedback on, Chief, and I talked quite a bit about it last month, but I'd like to get your perspective, is training. To me, it begins and ends with training, and the day you think you know it all and don't have to train anymore, and I always throw the respect out there to the senior guys who maybe we call it structural and non-structural firefighters. Some people call it interior and exterior, but even if you're an older firefighter and maybe not interior or structural anymore, there still should be drills for you, things you can do to keep polished, and we shouldn't forget about them when we do a tower drill or a live fire drill. We should think of things to do for them, and but the most feedback I'm getting from firefighters concerns training and their department's lack of preparation or taking it serious. And you can never take it too serious. Don't you agree?
Oh, excuse me. That's one of my pet peeves, and I often talk about it during my seminars. My travels around the country, I do seminars on, as you know, all different topics, whether it's firefighter survival or tactics or leadership. But invariably, the topic, the subject of training comes up, and obviously training is what I do now. I'm retired, and I travel around and teach and lecture and talk and train. And sometimes I'll ask an audience full of people. No, I often have mixed audiences, career people and volunteer people. And I'll say, okay, you career guys, you're working whatever it is, 8, 9, 10, 12 days a month, whatever your shift work is. I said, hopefully you're doing some type of a drill, some type of training every single shift, every single time you're in the firehouse. Well, sometimes we get busy. I said, wait a minute. I was a captain of 48 engine in the Bronx about 20 years ago. We doing 6,000 runs a year, and we drilled every day, just about every day. Once in a while we'd miss it because we were busy or we did have a fire and a bunch of stuff happened. But 99% of the time we drilled. We trained every day. Sometimes it was 20 minutes out on the apparatus floor talking about a hydrant or a hose. Sometimes it was an hour and a half out of the building looking at something that it was interesting. But the point is, with 6,000 runs a year, I wasn't too busy to train, And then I was in the squad. I was in a rescue. They're less busy. They do less running than that, but they're more busy. They actually go to more fires. And training, you trained every day there. Then I talked to the volunteers, and I said, who here trains at least once a week? And about half the hands went up. And I said, you guys that didn't raise your hand, how often do you? Well, we train every other week. So I'm saying, wait a minute. You're a volunteer firehouse. You only train twice a month. And if you miss one, you had to work or you had to be home with the family for some reason, you only went to one drill in a whole month? I said, how could you possibly expect to stay on your game? How could you expect to stay, like you say, professional? Professionals watch the things, and your level of training and expertise, that's an important part. That's the gold. That's the money. That's what we're here for. That's what people expect from us. They expect us to perform, and if you can't perform, we're not here for the blue lights. We're not here for the big screen TVs or for the pool tables or for all the other nice little things that we have in our firehouses, some of us, but we're here to perform, and if you can't, if you don't train, you're not going to perform. Case closed. Yep.
Absolutely. And you know what I found, too, is with training, yes, we have our formal, say, weekly drill, but I used to, and I bet you did this, too, I used to like at the routine call, say it was a routine fire alarm and we knew right away it was because of burnt popcorn. Every now and then I would stop the crew outside by the engine and say, okay, we rolled up and there was smoke showing, or somebody ran out and told us there's a fire on the second floor. What actions are we going to take right away? What do we have an SOP for this building? Have we pre-planned it? Where the hydrants are? Is it a high-rise? Do we need high-rise? And I'd get the guys engaged. Now, again, we're volunteers. Some of them got to get back to work or get back home with the kids. I understand it. We just spent 10 minutes talking about it. It wasn't a big deal.
You're not out there making
what a great way to drill.
But like you said, a couple of questions,
It gets everyone thinking. And
you know what the FDM did? It worked out great. Again, it's a long time ago. It's when I was a captain of 48 engine. That's when we introduced, we really got into EMS in a much bigger way. Obviously, we always did EMS not as an official function, but if people pulled the box and there was somebody hurt, we took care of it. While I was captain, we went to the CFRD, Certified First Responder with defibrillators on the rig, and to this day, engines are very busy now doing EMS running as well as all their fire running. But what we used to do is, now if you go out on a box, you go out on a gas leak or odor of smoke, the engine pulls up, go to a hydrant, they test it, the crew gets their gear on, they go to the back step, the nozzle man's up on the back step with his hand on the nozzle, everybody else is standing there ready to go. The truck goes in, makes their examination, food on the stove, whatever it is, or maybe they call for a line. Well, the engine doesn't really get in the building unless they call for a line. You could go to 20 of those calls, and the truck could say, oh, just food on the stove, we don't need the line, and, one engine and one truck's good, and give a signal, and everybody leaves. The engine never goes in because they're not needed. But now we're on EMS runs, so we say, you know what, now we're walking up to the third floor, apartment 3G, for some man that's having difficulty breathing, But we still look at the stairway and say, hey, guys, look at this stairway. It's got a good well hole. We could use a well hole stretch in this if we get a fire in this building now. We get up to the third floor, we say, look at the way these apartments are laid out. So even though we're going up to do EMS on the way out or on the way up, we notice stuff that we can sort of have a little training discussion. We're not even stopping to do it. We're doing it as we're walking through, or when we get done with the EMS call before we clear, we go down and take a look at the basement or take a quick look at the roof because it looked interesting when we walked up. So sometimes EMS runs you can use as a little training drill for other runs.
Absolutely, and I so remember doing that also. Sometimes you'd have 3 or 4 people taking care of the patient in the volunteer ranks. Sometimes you might have 10 standing around outside. Use that opportunity. Talk about the building. Talk about SOPs. Talk about make up where the fire is and what you would do. And do you want to hit the yard hydrant? Do you have yard? I mean, there's so much you could do. Hey, folks, we're on the air again with Chief Salka. If you have any questions for him and would like to call in, feel free. Call in at 760-454-8852. We'd love to hear from you. Again, it's 760-454-8852. If you have questions for me or Chief Salka or want to share any of your stories, we'd love to hear from you, wouldn't we, Chief?
Absolutely. One of our favorite things when Rick and I are doing our radio show is trying to get folks to call in. I end up hearing from them the next day. I get 2 or 3 emails the next day. Hey, Chief, I listened to your radio show last night, and I was wondering, and I end up writing back saying, why don't you call up during the show? Everybody else would love to hear you too, Right. And I know some people like. A lot of times I record it and listen to it later, and I get that. That's because everyone's so busy. But, hey, if you're out there listening, we'd love to hear from you. So, again, it's 760-454-8852. And, Chief, I want to stay on training a little bit more because another thing I find, and, again, I just wrote about this. It was last month's article, and I'm actually continuing with it this month with fire engineering, is the planning that goes into it. I find so many times the complaints I'm getting are people are showing up to their firehouse and officers or trainers are scrambling around, running around at the last minute getting prepared. And I understand, sometimes things happen. I mean, we have to provide for our families. We have to work. We have to coach that Little League game. I get that. But when it happens regularly, we've got a problem there that needs to be addressed, don't you think? Yep. I'll tell you what I did when I was chief of Salka-November. Again, here's some stuff that I did in the volunteers that I couldn't do in a paid. It just doesn't fit in it. It's not the same system. When I became chief of Salka-November, it'll be 20 years ago soon, and eventually I'll be chief again. And I'll tell you right now, it's going to happen again. The first thing I did was I gave each of the officers, each of the company officers, another responsibility outside of their tactical, outside of their fireground responsibility. So the engine officer was the engine officer, the truck officer was the truck officer, rescue officer, the captain. Everybody had their tactical job, their rig and their crew. Then I gave them something else. So one of the engine officers I gave all the turnout gear. Said, you're the guy that's in charge of the turnout gear. When we get a new member, when a guy has something damaged or needs to be replaced, you're the one that has the key to the locker. You're the one that tells me how many coats we have and helmets and pairs of gloves and whatever we need for next year. Next guy, I want you to take care of all the Scott bottles, make sure all the bottles are inspected properly, and anything needs to be sent out and get repaired. You're the guy that tags it and sends it out and make sure it come back in time. I want you to make sure that the compressor system is working so we can fill our bottles properly and that thing gets certified every year that it's been tested and all the other. So everybody had another job, So that was one thing I did. So each officer, not only with the officer, you run for officer in Salka-November, you don't just get an officer front piece and sit in the front seat. No, there's other responsibilities that go along with it. And the training responsibility was across the board for everybody. What I did was I would put up a month or 2 or maybe even 3. I might even do a quarter. I would develop a quarterly training schedule. So you'd have 3 months, January, February, March, 12 weeks or however many of that weeks that comes out to. And obviously the second Wednesday of every month is our company meeting. So we have at least 3 solid drills a month, right? And it would usually be engine, ladder, rescue, in that order. Engine, ladder, rescue, every single month. And what I would do is not only would I select the topic, and I don't mean engine, ladder, rescue. That wasn't the topic I selected. I would put engine, stretching, 1 3/4 hose lines, right? And that would be the topic. And then I would say, Lieutenant Brown. He's the guy that's given that drill. Then the next week would be the rescue, and it would be, packaging victims at car accidents or packaging victims on a backboard or whatever. And that would be, Captain Smith. And then, so I would plug a topic and an officer in, and I would put that up, and they would suddenly see, holy cow, I have the drill on January 7th, and I have the drill on February 19th. They would know what month or what week was their drill, and they would know what the topic was. So they had plenty of time to prepare for it, and we knew who the officer was that was going to run a drill because there it is on the calendar. And even if they had to swap off, oh, you know what, I'm working, I can't do that, I told them, then you swap amongst yourselves then, and just cross it off the list and change the names, or let me know and I'll change the names. But everybody has an assigned topic on an assigned date, and it, like I said, we had 2 engine and 1 ladder lieutenant, so we had and a rescue lieutenant. So we have 4 lieutenants and a captain. We have 6 officers. You only do it every 6 weeks. You don't even do it every month.
Right.
You know, so that's certainly not too much to ask for somebody. So as a as a volunteer fire officer, you should be able to do your tactical stuff. You should be able to do your administrative stuff, whether it's reports, whether it's maintaining the firehouse or equipment or gear, and you should be a trainer. Every officer has to be a trainer.
Absolutely. I used to say, a couple points I like to make is I used to say all the time to my people that were running for office or were an officer, you volunteered to join the department. That was one thing. You are now volunteering to be an officer. And by doing that, you're saying, understand family and your job come first. We get that. I mean, it has to. But when you say you want to be an officer, you're telling me, or you're telling the chief, that you have the time management skills that are necessary to accomplish the jobs. What you just mentioned, you're going to have those jobs that are weekly and monthly, but training is so huge. You have to be a trainer. That usually sets, in my department, and I'm sure in a lot of them, that usually is the definitive line between an officer that lasts for several years and those that only are in for a year or two. It's the ability to organize and run a training drill.
Yep.
Now, what did you do?
Yep. Go ahead.
One of the challenges too, and I'd like to hear how you handle this, is as the chief or the training officer, you delegate that drill, and you tell Joe Smith, Lieutenant Smith, to go run with that drill. How do you make sure he's doing it the way, not always the way you want it done, but you're conforming to your department expectations and SOPs? In other words, this is the way you've always done it. Do you check on his planning process, or do you let him roll with it and see how it goes?
I never really checked on the planning process, but I would always check on the product. You know, I would always be there for drill night and see what was going on. Obviously, the chief has a lot of stuff to do on drill night. Mm-hmm. Sometimes our commissioners are meeting on drill night. Sometimes we're just in the office catching up on fire reports, or talking about a drill that's coming up, or talking about a parade, or talking about whatever's going on, a fire prevention activity. So, you know, it's not like every chief could be out at the drill, but we try and have at least one of the chiefs out at the drill, whether the drill is in the firehouse, whether it's at a remote location or somewhere else, or at the training center. But somebody's always not watching, but you know, standing by and listening in and making sure. And you're right. Otherwise, some guy could just start talking nonsense. He could be giving bad information out because everybody doesn't know everything. So you got to have some type of material for them as well. You got to have a set of IFSTA manuals or training books that are available to the officers that they can go in, and even if they have to read up on something a little bit and say, hey, you're doing a Hearst tool drill next week, right? Yeah. You got to have answers for questions. These guys might ask, gee, how wide do those spreaders go? Or what's the maximum lift? Will it lift a truck? Will it lift a garbage truck? Will it lift a concrete truck? You have to know the answers, you know. So, and the answers are right there in the book. So you got to give them resources as well. You can't just expect them to perform without support.
And then correcting, would you, if there was a mistake, I know obviously a glaring safety mistake, you would step in right away. But for little things, would you wait till after the drill to go over it with that officer, or would you step in right there and correct it?
You know what? You know what? That's a tough question. It's not really tough because I know what I do. My rule is, it's not my rule. Actually, I borrowed it from Colin Powell. Rick Lasky and I stress this one point, and we stress it all the time in our leadership classes and our company officer classes. And here it is. Never walk past a mistake, right? And I consider you allowing somebody to say something and you not saying anything is like walking past a mistake. And the real reason is he's instructing. He's teaching a group of people. If you just stand there and let him give bad information out, somebody out there might be committing it to memory. And then now you have a couple of people that have the wrong information. So anytime somebody says something wrong, Again, it's how you say it. You know, you got to be diplomatic. Sometimes I'll say, hold on a second now, wait a minute. Billy, did you just say 3,000 pounds or did you say 6,000 pounds? Oh, 3,000. No, it's not 3,000. It's 6,000. You guys are listening now? It's 6,000 pounds, and I understand not a big deal that he used the wrong number, but let's get the right number down. It's 6,000 pounds. Or whatever the particular issue is. The issue doesn't matter. The fact doesn't matter. But if during instruction somebody gives something incorrect, you know what? If you do it professionally, again, there we are with that word, right? If you do it professionally, say, time out, that's not exactly correct. What the answer is you can use it here, but you can't use it there. No, you can't take your face piece off, but you can use it this way. And you have to correct it. And then, you know, you can talk to them later and say, gee, I hope I didn't, you know, step on your toes while you're doing that, but I don't want the bad information to go out there and be unchallenged, you know. So
right.
You got to be professional about doing it, but I don't think there's time to let stuff go out and then everybody goes home. Then you talk to the guy about it. No, but nobody has the bad information, you know.
I just thought of an example in my own department where that happened several years ago. And it was a very innocent mistake, if that's the right word to use, regarding we do a very good in-depth standard operating procedure drill twice a year, which goes through the apparatus lineup. But one of the things we don't like to hear in my department is, and it's one of my pet peeves, and it's been the pet peeves of the chiefs before me, and we just keep passing it on. We don't ever say, where do you want us? Everyone knows where that piece of apparatus has to go. Now, that can be changed, obviously, and if the incident commander deems a change necessary, yes, he will tell an engineer
and he'll get right on the radio. Sure. Yep.
Exactly. But if it's a routine fire, no one will say, where do you want us? Same with, no one will say hit a hydrant. No one will say which line to pull, because they know for house fire it's a 3/4, commercial it's 2.5. We have a system where we have a feeder pumper, and that pumper knows to hit the hydrant. So we will never say, where do you want us?
Right.
We were at a drill one night, and we were practicing, and the second in engine, which feeds our first in engine, has a very specific place to park when it first arrives at the scene. It's forward of the first in engine. And they didn't do it. They parked parallel. And they were going to continue drilling and not correct that mistake. I had just gotten out as chief, and I didn't want to say anything because I don't want to be that guy. Oh, you should be as chief. So luckily, the assistant chief, who was an assistant chief under me, he caught it, and he stepped in at the thing, and said, wait a minute. And that's a perfect example of highlighting what you just said. Step in, correct it. Do it professionally. You don't be nasty or condescending, of course, but step in and correct it, because otherwise you get a bunch of new people. They're learning the wrong way.
Yeah.
And even if you try to say something 2 hours later back at the firehouse after you're having the meal, it's just, to me, it's not the same. You got to correct it there.
Never walk past a mistake. Good piece of advice.
Absolutely. Hey, folks, again, if anyone would like to call in, that number 760-454-8852. We're talking with Chief Salka from the FDNY, also Assistant Chief at the South Blooming Grove Volunteer Fire Company. And how far? You're north of New York, right? About an hour, is it? You had an hour drive in and back?
65 miles in the Catskill Mountains. I live, I don't know if I think I showed you a picture. I live in a log house up in the middle of the woods. It is absolutely beautiful here. And we did have some snow on opening day of the gun season. The southern zone, which was the 15th. You guys are up in the northern zone. I'm sure the seasons are different up there. But
it just started
about 65
the other
north
day.
Of the city. Yep.
Okay. So you had a lot of time to think going in about the upcoming shift, and a lot of time to think coming home about what just happened over your last.
I'll tell you what, that was valuable. That was valuable time to me. I used to love. I sort of would ramp myself up a little bit, get a little bit excited, start thinking about getting to the firehouse, and think about what I wanted to finish that I had started on my last set of tours, or maybe what was going to go on that evening, and then after a 24-hour shift driving home the following evening, I would do the same thing. I would decompress and I would relax a little bit as I started to get farther away from the city, up through the Taconic Parkway, up through the mountains and over the Bear Mountain Bridge, and before you know it, I'm in the woods. There's deer in the road before I get home, and it was very helpful to me to have that hour commute in both directions. No, it wasn't traffic. It was usually just driving. You know, I mean, obviously I was with traffic, but I wasn't bumper to bumper traffic like it used to be when I was in Long Island. So the commute actually became sort of beneficial, and I sort of looked forward to it. It was nice. It was both the drive in and the drive home had a specific purpose, and they were very helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. You probably You probably, your blood pressure probably dropped the minute you entered the woods area, right?
yeah, for sure.
Well, we got to take another time out here for another commercial from our friends over at Granger. And we thank them very much for sponsoring the show and allowing great guests to be on here like Chief Salka.
With over 100,000 safety products, it makes me wonder, did Granger write the book on workplace safety? Get your copy today. Get it? Got it? Good. Call, click Granger.com, or stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
Thanks again to Granger. And as we speak, Chief, the brothers in Buffalo, I can hear in the background in my office, they have something going. They just hit the evacuation tone, and they're ordering everybody out of the attic. So
really?
Bad weather. Yeah, and the bad weather here tonight, they got another challenge on their hands. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but they just hit the evacuation tone. So we'll wish them the best.
In the snow sometimes is not fun. Hitting the hydrants,
they had
frozen lines, and
South Buffalo today is just getting nailed. I don't know if the fire's in South Buffalo, but the south area of our city is just getting nailed. They were using snowmobiles to get the patients today, and there was a heart attack, or I think even a cardiac arrest in a volunteer area where they couldn't get to them. And then I believe I saw something come across my alerts that there was a structure fire in South Buffalo, and the apparatus was
South
having
Buffalo.
trouble.
You mean the southern part of the city of Buffalo?
Correct. Yes, south
okay.
South part.
For
of the
some
city
cities,
of Buffalo.
the south is a different city. You know.
No, that's part of Buffalo at the south side. And you know what? Let me just take a second here. We got a caller, Chief. Let's see who we got here from the 971 area code. Hello, caller. Are you there?
Hey, how's it going, guys, from the Pacific Northwest?
Hello there. You're with Chief Salka. Who do we have?
Chris Cahoon from just south of Portland, Oregon.
Thanks for joining us. What can we do for you tonight?
Well, I got a couple of questions for you guys. I'm getting ready to take over. I'm a captain right now. I've been in the fire service 15 years. I'm getting ready to take over as the chief of a small volunteer department, chief's volunteer position all the way down through the ranks. And I'm just kind of curious, where should I think about beginning to try and shift the thinking and the aura from the good old boy, the old way mentality, up to the new, let's do the technology stuff, let's incorporate some of the new thinking, the new, like the slicers and all that kind of stuff.
That's a good question.
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean,
I don't want to outrun people. You know what I mean? I don't want to.
Right. Well, you can't change everything overnight. That's the first thing.
Right.
You know,
right.
although you're already in the system, right? You're a captain. You said you're moving up to a chief or assistant chief.
Yeah. Chief. Yeah.
Okay. Have you risen through the ranks? Have you slowly come up, and now it's your turn to be the chief? Is that it?
Yeah, I've been there almost 8 years. I started as a backseat rider, and moved my way up through the ranks.
So, what kind of stuff is going on there that you see that you would like to do differently or better? Do you have a list? Did you put a little list of stuff together? Do you have some ideas?
I have quite a 5-year plan. Yeah.
Great.
Great. I think that they don't want to use computers as far as reporting goes. The department's not interested in grants to update equipment. There just hasn't been a lot of forward thinking, I guess would be a good way to say it. Right. Are you sure you don't work for the Supplement Grove Fire Department? Because that's what I was faced with. And my little volunteer fire department's a great organization. We got a lot of great young guys and older guys as well. And we did the same thing. I think we were going on like 15 years. And I said, is somebody going to do some grant writing here or something? I said, do I have to? Am I going to have to go take a class or find somebody? And eventually, we wrote a couple of grants and we got some stuff. But
it's funny that you say that, because I've asked in the past to go to some classes for grant writing, and they don't want anything to do with it. They keep saying that they don't need the help. They don't want it.
Who's they? Who's they? Is it your board?
The board, yeah.
Okay.
Now the problem with fighting the board is they run the show. They own the place, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And I don't want to go in, like I said, guns blazing. The board members have been the board members for the last 15 plus years. Nothing's changed. Nobody runs against them. It's just kind of a check off that on the ballot kind of a thing.
Right. And that's a very, very common situation in lots of volunteer fire departments. Now,
yeah,
I
I
board
found
members think they don't need stuff. Is it because they really don't need stuff? Is your tax base fine? Do you have enough money to get whatever you need, or no?
No. Well, I mean, we did get a levy 5 years ago. We got one 2010 and a 2011 Pierce Contender. Our water tenders, as they're known out here, are tankers back east. We have two 4,000-gallon tankers, but they're from the 1980s. They're Freightliner cab-overs. They're the ones that the government says they don't want on the road anymore.
Right.
Is there an apparatus replacement plan, or is it just you're going to get them when you get grant? In other words, are you guys slowly saving for new apparatus, or is it only if you get grant money that you can do it?
Yeah, they do put a contingency aside every year, but there's no interest. They think that these are great trucks. I don't understand their thinking on it.
All right.
But there was also
how many members? How many members on that board?
There's 6.
Okay, and how many members in the department?
25.
Well, I'll tell you another thing you could do is once you move up, once you ascend to the chief position, obviously the chief probably meets monthly or on a regular basis with the board. Yes.
Yeah, every month.
I would very slowly and very professionally. That's the topic for the night with Tom. I would propose a single item, a single whatever it was, a need that maybe it's those tenders. Maybe you could put in an apparatus replacement schedule. Slowly break into something new and get them to buy in. And I think once you break the ice, sometimes if things work well, whether it's with radios, whether it's turnout gear, whether it's SCBAs, whether it's apparatus, there's a million things that we all need that we have to keep up with. Pick something that don't bite off more than you can chew. See if you can get something to happen positively that you sort of get the ball rolling on. And then, obviously they already know you. It's not like you're from outside. You've come up to a department, but that might be a good starting point.
Does it also apply, Chris, to your firefighting, or is this more for equipment and moving the department forward, or do you also see a culture change needed when it comes to how you're doing emergency operations?
I do see a little bit of that. They're not. We have some older members, and them bringing up the newer, younger guys. There's never been a want or a thought to do interior firefighting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I found whenever I wanted to do something new, you can't do everything new right off the bat, but I would slowly work with my group. As I was coming through the ranks, I was fortunate that I had some allies, so to speak, people, well, they weren't always even my age, but people that served as lieutenant with me and captain with me, and we shared the same philosophies because we read the fire engineerings and the firehouses and went online and looked when that became available.
That is something I do have. I do have the younger group. I'm only in my early 30s, and I grew up back east, and that was the mentality, get in, hit it hard, and get out, and go home. But so I do have the younger guys on the training nights that we've had, and the towers and stuff. It's like, hey, let's just try this and see how it works, kind of a thing, as opposed to doing this. And so the younger guys have bought into that kind of a system, but it's getting, like I said, the upper brass to change their thinking. So I've kind of just said, all right, then I'll put my name in for the chief because I have a vision that I see that I think the department needs to go in to continue as a department and not be eaten up by some of the bigger departments that surround us.
Well, I think what I would do, and Chief Salka, let me know if you would agree, I would just, for the firematic side of things, for the operation side of things, I would slowly work at that through the regular training drills. Usually those are the guys going to drills are the ones that are going to be on your front lines anyway. And I could be wrong with that, but I imagine your board members, since most have been in a long time, are they all interior firefighters? Are they going to be running the pumps, or where are they going to be in the operation?
No, the board members are all just community members that have never been on the front line of doing that. They're just on the board.
So operationally, you working with the drill night people should help I would think, get some enhancements to your fireground operations, because you're working with them every week or every 2 weeks at drill, and you can get your ideas and work with your officers to say, here's how we're going to do things. So your biggest challenge most likely is the previous thing we talked about, getting the resources you need.
And so what I guess another thing I'd like to see happen is the structure of the department change a little bit. Right now, so we have a station and a substation, which is like a secondary station. We have a chief, 2 battalion chiefs, 2 captains, or 3 captains actually. And I'd like to kind of shift that back to a chief, a lieutenant, a chief, an assistant chief, a captain, a lieutenant. Am I crazy thinking that there's too many power players running around, or is that just not something I should
What did you say you have the chief, and what's under the chief?
What's that?
Yeah, the chief level, what's the rank below chief?
2 battalion chiefs, 1 for each station.
So each station has a battalion chief, which is almost the equivalent of like an assistant chief or a deputy chief, right? Mm-hmm. Like in my volunteer firehouse, we have the chief, a first assistant, and a second assistant. So there's 3 chiefs. We have just 1 station, but even places that have 2 or 3 stations generally have a chief and a first assistant and a second assistant, and then it goes to the company level, captains and lieutenants. So you have a chief, 2 battalion chiefs, and 2 what, captains?
3 captains.
So what are the captains? Is there a captain for each unit?
I've been in charge of the station and the equipment in the station, keeping track of it, making sure that the monthly checks are done, the equipment's running and up to date. If something needs to be fixed, I take care of it. There's a captain for each station, and then there's an EMS captain who runs all the EMS, making sure everything is, all the medicines are good. So there's a captain for each station and a battalion chief for each station?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, do you think that might be too many?
I don't see, the only people doing any work are myself and the other captain. I mean, the battalion chiefs are in that old system where they don't go to drills very much. They're not around a whole lot.
And these guys are they in those positions for a certain amount of time and then they move up or out, or are they just there for a long time?
No, it's just they're there. It's been a hey, I've been on the department the longest kind of a thing.
Right.
Are they elected?
That's how I see it, or that's how I've seen it for the last 7 or 8 years.
And they're elected to that position?
Well, nobody questions it. That's the thing.
Well, I'll tell you what you got to do is, it sounds like there's plenty of stuff that either needs changing or to be adjusted a little bit, but you're going to have to pick 1 or 2 things and let the rest of the stuff just sit. Just be how it is. You can't change too much too fast, or they're going to throw you out on your ass. That's what they're going to do.
That's what I was worried about.
Oh, absolutely. So if you want to stay and make a change, make 1. Make something happen. And when that's done, if there's a success, then go to your next thing and pick something else. And just do it piecemeal. Do it a little bit at a time. You're never going to finish it all. Like Chief Lasky and I say, one generation plants the seeds, and the next generation enjoys the shade. So you might be making it easy for the guy that's going to be chief after you or maybe after him, but don't do too much at once, or they're just going to throw you away. They're going to say, look at this guy, wants to come in and change everything, and nobody likes that. Nobody likes to get bounced out.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what your consensus of one of the most important things would be, but I guess that's the department thing. So,
were you listening to us earlier? Did you hear us talk about training?
I actually just flipped you on. I caught your little pop up on Facebook. So I turned it on.
Training
and
is
it.
If you have things that need to be done on training, and if you get some good young, or not even some young, just good firefighters that do come to training and want to learn, that's the place where you're going to have the best impact right away.
Training. Excellent.
I always used to look for any allies you can find that can help deliver your message. Most likely you've got a couple allies that share your beliefs. And hopefully they're in the officer ranks with you, but if not, maybe they're influential senior guys even. If you could get a couple allies to help work with and plant the seeds with these other people, I think that would help too, don't you, Chief Salka?
Absolutely. Even if you just get 1 or 2 people that can help you get stuff done,
Excellent. All right. Thank you guys very much.
You're welcome.
All right, Chris, thanks for calling in, and good luck with everything. All right, check back in with us in a few months.
Absolutely.
All right,
good
luck. All right,
Bye.
Take care. Well, he's got some
it seems like I've heard heard questions like that and situations like that over and over and over and over and over again. Sometimes it's amazing.
Yep. And the volunteer, that is one of the challenges of the volunteer companies. I mean, again, we were going to talk about the challenges of being volunteer and the advantages of being paid and vice versa, but one of the challenges being volunteer, as you well know, I guess would be the election cycle. And sometimes you might be doing what's best for that department and best for its operation, but boy, you still got to win an election, don't you? That's going to be a subject for another time, I think.
I wrote an article. Gosh, I don't know what it was. I could probably dig it up for you and send it to you, or you could probably research it and find it on firehouse.com. But I wrote an article called "Who's the Boss," and it was about all the different ways that departments select their lineup, whether it be the chiefs or the company officers or
Now, how does it work in South Blooming Grove? You said
say again?
You said you're 9-2 now, so you're going to be chief. Do you still have to get elected every year? Or are you in the
Every year we have an
rotation?
election every single year. And actually we have a term limit for chief. About 15 or 20 years ago they put term limits in just for chief. Chief can only serve 2 one-year terms. So you can only be chief for 2 years, which is horrendous. It's your first year and your last year. I tried to make it 3 at least. So that you have your first year, your middle year, and your last year, but nobody would go for it. We have like 18 ex-chiefs in the department right now. We get more ex-chiefs than we do black helmets, And but anyway, there's lots of different ways that people pick offices around the country, and I wrote it in the article. I identified a couple of departments that had pretty unique ways of doing it.
Yeah, it's true. In our department, it's you have to get elected every year, but you can serve maximum of 5 years as chief. Some think that's a little too long. I personally liked it because the first year, as you know, you're getting your feet wet. The second year, you might slowly make some of those changes we just talked about. And now it gives you a few years to see those changes through and enjoy the ride. And
the last year you can wind down and get your replacement geared up.
And get that's a huge part. Wouldn't you agree, Chief? There's nothing worse, and I've heard these stories, and I'm sure you have too. There's nothing worse than getting your department rolling along, getting changes you wanted, or let's say even just continuing on the great things that your department's always done, but not having a transition plan, and all of a sudden when you get out, there's no one to pass the baton to, or let's say whoever you're passing that baton to isn't up to the task, and you see these great ways of doing things, these great procedures you've had established or whatever, programs that have been implemented over the years fall apart. That has to be very hard for a chief or an ex-chief or former chief to see happen, and I'm sure you've heard stories of that.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I've been to places. It's never really happened here. We have a very small, very traditional volunteer fire department here in South Blooming Grove. Everybody gets along. There's really not that I'm aware of. I've been here a long time, and no real tight cliques or anything like that, and no real personality conflicts where this guy doesn't get along with that guy. And once in a while you see that the guy who's chief doesn't get along with the guy who's first assistant or second assistant, and they hardly talk. And it's just damaging for the department. It's not helpful to anybody,
Absolutely. One more call, Chief, we got coming in, if you don't mind. I don't want to keep you all night, but I think we have one more person interested to talk with us.
Sure.
They're actually from our local 716 area code, which is my neck of the woods. So let's see who we have on here. Hi, you're on with Chief Salka and Chief Merrill. Who we have here?
Hey, Chief, it's Billy Major.
Hey, Chief Major, my friend from the Clarence, New York area. How you doing tonight, Chief?
Good. How are you guys? You guys sound great.
We're doing great. What
night.
Can we do for you?
Hey, my one question is, and with being both on the career side and on the volunteer side, dealing with the comments, and you get it both sides, both houses. This isn't the career house. We don't do it that way. And on the career side, you'll hear things said about the volunteers. You have more opportunities or more assets than we do, and just how do you counter that, or what kind of advice would you have for that?
Chief Salka, I'm going to turn that one over to you because I'm sure that's something you've dealt with.
I almost started talking about that earlier, and I ended up not. I'm pretty fortunate in my little volunteer outfit, South Blooming Grove. It's not an issue and never has been an issue. I'm not sure if I've ever heard those words. I'm sure somebody's thought it somewhere. These city guys are doing everything, the way they do it there, or these city guys think we're going to do everything the way they do it in New York City. I'm sure somebody's thought it, but there's really not a problem with it. However, I do know, and in my travels around the country, there's plenty of places where there's tension between, the guys that are career firefighters and then go and volunteer somewhere else where they live. And it's like, hey, this isn't New York City, or this isn't Kansas City, or this isn't, Boston. We do things differently here. And you know what? You got to get everybody on the same page. The guys that are volunteers that are not career guys, the guys that are career guys that are both volunteer, two-hatters that do both things. You got to tell guys, listen, there's no difference. Yeah, and Tom, you've made this point in your articles. There's really no difference between career firefighters and volunteer firefighters, except that some guys get a paycheck and some guys don't. I know some volunteer firefighters that are the best, most trained, most, the greatest guys around. They can and I know some paid guys that couldn't put a fire out in a top hat, that really don't care about anything. They really don't drill. They don't train. They're not interested in what's going on. They wouldn't buy their own flashlight. If their department-issued flashlight broke, they would go to fires in the dark before they would buy their own flashlight. You know what I'm saying? So
yes,
it's a tough fight, because sometimes people like lining up. Some volunteers feel threatened by career guys. Some career guys feel like they're aloof. They're better than volunteer guys. And you got to tell guys, look, let's get all that off the table. We're here for one thing and for one thing only. In the Saplement Grove or the Ridgefield Park Fire Department or wherever it is that you're a volunteer or a career guy, we're here to do a service to the public. This is a public service. We're here to do service for the people, not to fight amongst ourselves and see who's better and who's worse and why, and why. So I'm not sure if that's helpful to you at all. That's a problem all around the country, especially departments that have both career and volunteer in the same department.
It is, and those are the words that I've spoken, with the folks that I encounter it with. I come from a family that has been firefighters for a long time, and even at the kitchen table, my brother, who's a volunteer chief in a smaller rural department, him and I will have the conversation, and more than once I've heard, well, you know what, we're not paid, or we don't have we can only do what we can do, and I say, well, we're all professionals. And he believes in that, and he pushes that. But sometimes when you run up against that wall, and even in my own volunteer house, you'll hear those types of things. So I just wanted to make sure that was the. I respect what you've done in your career and what words you put out there. And I just wanted to make sure that I was on track with what you.
Yeah, you knew the answer already. You were just calling up to us to see if we knew it.
Yeah, it's all about delivering a professional service, no matter whether you get a paycheck or not. It's
yep.
And I know there's some real heated debates on both sides of the two-hatter issue, and the bottom line to me is, look at some people just want to volunteer in their fire department to help their community, and they work hard at it, and they want to be the best firefighter they can be to take care of their little neck of the wood. They could be working their paid job and have no desire to earn a paycheck. The bottom line is they just want to help their local community. And then there's others that will do it just for the paycheck. But the bottom line is the service has to be delivered as confidently, effectively, professionally as possible, paid or volunteer.
Yep.
Agreed.
Chief, thanks for calling in, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
talk to you later.
Absolutely.
All right.
Take care, Chief.
Bye-bye. Yeah,
all right.
Talk to you later, Tommy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's Chief Bill Major. He's the chief of the Clarence Fire Company, which is a little bit east of me. He's also a paid firefighter, paramedic at the Buffalo Airport. He's got all sorts of great stories. That's he's a good guy.
Now there's a guy in your department, if I'm not mistaken, one of the assistant chiefs or something now that was moving up when you moved out, when you retired out. He's with Rescue or something in Buffalo.
He's with Buffalo Rescue One, absolutely. And him and I have had many conversations on the same subject matter you and I are talking about tonight. That is Assistant Chief Mark Van Horn. He's our first assistant chief.
Very nice fellow. I enjoyed his company when I was visiting.
Yes, great knowledge and great trainer, and certainly has passed on some great ideas and training tidbits to all of us, and we're lucky to have him. We're real lucky to have him. So, well, Chief, I don't want to take up more of your time. I know it's going on an hour and 20 minutes. I hope you're okay with that.
Oh, I'm fine. I'll give you another 5 or 10 minutes if you'd like. I've been working on my
tell you what I'd like to talk about.
My wife's got me finishing the laundry room, so I've been out insulating and 2x4s and sheetrocking, and I'm just about done. Tomorrow morning I should be done.
Yeah, it never ends. That's the honey-do list, right? And now that you're retired, I'm sure it's quite lengthy.
Just remember, happy wife, happy life.
That's a great line. I'll remember that.
Oh, yes.
But being a leader in the volunteer company, to me, and this is something that I'm going to do a show on, and I asked Chief Halton to recommend some great volunteer leaders out there. Obviously, I can't use you every month, but because one of the challenges I see, and I would like to get into it more, but since I have you tonight, I'd like your take on it, is the difference between being a paid command officer where, hey, this is the order, you have to do it, it's your paid job, versus motivating volunteers and giving them orders, but you kind of have to do it differently, both on the fire ground and in the firehouse, because let's face it, they don't have to go to the call. They're just volunteer.
Right.
So
Right.
if we make them mad and upset and are condescending or nasty, what's their answer going to be? Well, the heck with that guy. I'm just not going to go to calls for the next 2 months. He treated me bad. But if it's your paid job, hey, you got to go. Big challenge here, right, Chief?
Yes, and it's particular to the volunteer fire service because, like you said, you have to appeal to their to what they are interested in doing, to the fact that they want to be treated fairly and professionally, and they want to learn, and they don't want to waste their time. Every minute that they're spending on a call, every minute that they're spending at a drill is a minute that they're taking away from their personal life or their livelihood or the job that they do. Some guys that work in communities like where your volunteer fire department is, they might live and work right in the same town. They might even be allowed to leave their job to go on calls. Some people are. So that's valuable. That's a valuable piece of time that they're spending in a volunteer fire department. They don't want to be treated like a slave. They don't want to be yelled at. They don't want to be talked down to. Some people make the mistake of thinking, well, I'm the boss now. Here, that's an order. And you can't do that. Now, that has nothing to do with volunteer or career, except for the fact that you could get away with that in a career department because people are going to keep showing up because it's their job and they're feeding their family. And then a volunteer might say, you know what, I know guys that don't go on calls or don't go on drills when they know certain officers are going to be in charge because they don't get along with them and they don't like the way that they manage their time. So, yeah, it's very important, especially in a volunteer fire service, to treat people with respect, know that everybody doesn't have the same level of expertise. I had a pretty high level and pretty high expectations when I was in the 18th Battalion, when I was in 48 Engine, when I was in Rescue 3. And I'm not saying I have lower standards in the volunteers. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am telling you is that I know I have people there that have varying degrees of ability. Some people are very able. Some people are less physically able. Some people are very able mentally, professionally, skilled. And some people are less skilled. That's all there is to it. They're volunteer firefighters. They're community-minded people. They're very nice to donate their time. But some of them, are not going to go to the roof for you and cut a hole in the roof. They're just unable to do that. So you have to find work and find jobs and find tasks for them that they can do. And there's a job for everybody. And
absolutely.
Like I said, you can't treat everybody like paid workers because otherwise they'll stop coming or they'll quit. They'll just walk away.
Exactly. Everyone's got a strength, and I think as a leader, you need to spend time getting to know your people, and you know what the strengths are. And, Chief, wouldn't you agree that when you have a fire, as an example, at a fire call, when you have a fire, when you look over who's showing up on the apparatus or in their car, you're going to be you're going to use a little discretion maybe as to who you're assigning to the roof because
absolutely
that's not everybody's strength. So there's certain people you're not going to give that order to.
Right.
And same with taking a line inside. But you can't hold that against them back at the firehouse and treat them worse. You can continue to work with them and train with them, but let's face it, everybody has different learning curves. Everybody has different intelligence levels, but that's the nature of the volunteer fire service. And I used to say
I don't
all
know if you have this, but in my volunteer department and many others that I've visited, there are folks that are very, very active in the company. They're the president of the company, and they run the Fire Prevention Week, and they do fundraising, and they do all sorts of stuff. But they show up at lots of calls, but they're never really active at calls. They're not really go-getters or hard chargers. They never run for officer. but they're very important to the company. They have other skills that they're very influential and very important to the company. And they show up for all their runs, and they take a mark, and they get on the rig when necessary, but they don't try to be the nozzle man or try to run for lieutenant, because their strength is in the other areas, and that's where they excel. And you have to understand that everybody is not the same, and everybody is not going to have the same ability or skill set, you know.
Absolutely, and there's some people that still have firefighters as title, but they'll never take a line in. But now there's other areas, and this is something that when we talk about recruitment down the road someday, we'll get more into. But there are companies out there that are now taking people in, and they're never ever going to be an interior firefighter. It's not unheard of. They may be interested in being the department treasurer because they're a banker, or they just like working with them, but they're never going to be an interior firefighter. And in New York, I know they have the scene support operations class, which prepares people for scene support activities, which is exactly what you just described, which is a whole nother idea for the volunteer fire service.
There's a lot of work to be done, a lot of jobs that can get taken care of by those folks.
Oh, my gosh, absolutely, tons of jobs. But the bottom line is we have to realize that everyone brings something to the table. Everybody.
I've told guys in the volunteer fire service, I said, you're a chief standing in front of a house on fire in a small community in a volunteer fire service. You have a harder job than me as a battalion chief in the Bronx, because you have all these varying different people. You have response times that could vary from 1 minute to 8 minutes. You don't know how many people are going to show up on a Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock for a house fire. And I do. I got 8 companies or 12 companies coming. I know how many guys are on each rig. I know they're going to be there in 4 minutes, and I know I got good water. I said, it's a harder job to be a volunteer fire chief with varying degrees of people showing up and the weather and time of day and everything else.
Yep, and like I said, we could spend another episode about leadership and management and what we need to do to prepare ourselves and continue to learn, and that's why we have the good books that you've written.
What you can do, Tom, is, you know what, a couple of months out, pick a date a couple of months out, and Rick and I can both come on.
Okay, I would love that, Chief. I absolutely
You can do a leadership night, and we can talk about leadership and the classes that we do, and maybe get some folks to call in.
And, Chief, now that you mention it, why don't we, since we're winding down here, and this has just been such a great night, I could talk forever, and the information is just continuing to, it amazes me, your knowledge and what you can talk about in the fire service, and that's why we're going to do another night. But if people wanted to get a hold of you, and have you come out and talk to them or put on a presentation in any of the areas that you do, such as leadership or tactics or anything like that, how can people get a hold of you?
Sure. Well, they can get my email. My email is firecomtraining, F-I-R-E, firecom, C-O-M, training, one word, firecomtraining at AOL.com, or they can go visit my website, which is www.firecommandtraining.com.
Excellent. And if anyone would like to get a hold of me, I'd love to hear from people. I do have a presentation I put together on the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. I've been invited back to FDIC this year. I am so excited. I'm doing a 4-hour class this year, Chief, on Tuesday. And so excited to expand my presentation from last year. But I'd love to hear from you out there. If you have ideas, things you want to talk about, success stories, because, again, there's so many great – how many fire departments? Over 47,000 in the United States, and over 75%, 80% are volunteer departments. There's so many good things going on out there. Love to hear from you. Reach out to me. My email is tamerrill63@AOL.com. I'm on Facebook. Someone recommended that I do a Facebook professional volunteer page, so I got to get my IT guys working on that, because maybe I'll get one of my daughters to help me do that. They teach me how to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
But would love to hear from you all out there. And Chief, I can't thank you enough for taking the time.
Oh, you know, it was my pleasure, Tom. It's been great.
And I will hold you to that. If I could get I did get an email or Facebook communication from Chief Lasky yesterday, because I asked his permission to use that clip. His roll call tip for fire engineering this month has to do with exactly what we've been talking about, professional and paid firefighters. So I just wanted his permission to be able to use it tonight, and of course he granted that. And in my conversation with him, I asked him if he could be on my show someday, and he said absolutely. So maybe we can do a show on leadership with you two. I think that would
be great.
Yeah,
pick a spot a couple of months down the road after you get a bunch of other people on. But whenever you want, email me, and then I can email Rick, and we can the three of us arrange one of your nights, one of your show nights, and we would both love to be on your show.
Oh, that would be excellent. And one last thing before we sign off, Chief, it's something I'm going to start doing, and it might be a little hokey, but it's an idea I came up with. I'm always looking and reading about the great American fire service, the great worldwide fire service for that matter, and I'm going to do a shout-out of the month. And I want to do a shout-out to volunteer fire departments that are out there throughout the world doing great things, and they don't even know I'm doing this, and it's just a little article I found, and I really want to give a shout-out to the Croton Volunteer Fire Department, which is in New York. It's a village near the Hudson, I guess, 35 miles north of New York. And in 1982, they started an Explorer post, and it was 70 people strong at one point, and today 48% of their active membership started out as explorers at some point, including some of their chief officers. And I think that is great. They saw a need to work on strategies to increase their membership. They started an explorer post, and that was in 1982. And since 1990, 70 people has joined as explorers, and today roughly 48% of those members that are active started as explorers. And I would like to say hats off to the Croton Fire Department, which is outside or on the Hudson, 35 miles north of New York City. Great job, and that's something I want to do every month. I want to recognize.
You know what?
That's
a great little feature that you're going to do. You can spend some time researching, and then each month have a honor a particular company or a department. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. And before we sign off, Chief, we just got to say one more nice ad from Grainger here, since they've been so kind to sponsor us.
When we put out fires, it ain't the metaphor kind, kid. That's why I use Grainger. They got everything. They got Bullard helmets, Cosmos boots, Elkhart brass nozzles, and on top of it all, Grainger's got the inventory management solutions to keep the heat off the books. Heck, they've got just about everything you need for the fire station except the trucks. When you think fire rescue, you think Grainger. Get it? Got it? Good. Call, click Grainger.com/public safety, or stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You know what? You could say the firefighters are the ones that get it done, that's for sure. Volunteer or paid, it doesn't matter, Chief. Do you have any last thoughts on that matter? Volunteer, paid, we're all professional, right?
Absolutely. Make us proud. That's what I tell guys all the time on Facebook when I see guys say, hey, tomorrow's my first day in the Boston Fire Department, or tomorrow's my first day in the Lafayette Volunteer Firehouse. I can't wait. I always say, make us proud.
Excellent. Well, Chief, thank you again for your time tonight. It's just been absolutely great having you on the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, and I look forward to working with you and Chief Lasky down the road a bit, and we'll talk more about this great fire service of ours.
Great, Tom. My pleasure. Thank you.
Excellent, Chief. We'll be talking to you again soon. Folks, that's it. Thanks for joining us tonight. Again, love to hear from you. Send me your stories. Send me your success stories. Send me your challenges. Tell me some good things that are happening out your way. We'd love to get you talking on the show, or I'll talk about it for you. Other than that, this is Tom Merrill saying thanks for joining us. This has been the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, and we will talk to you again in about 6 weeks or so. Thank you very much.